Hello, everyone. Core Use Bloody History. We're continuing on with ZRRIFLE file. This is a pretty enlightening file. It goes over all of the various assassination or coup attempts that the CIA may or may not have been involved with. Remember, the CIA is even their Inspector General in reviewing these assassination attempts in Dominican Republic and in Chile. Dominican Republican's funny because he's like, yeah, we were talking to these guys, and yeah, we were trying to get him to do a coup, and we were trying to get him to kill Trujillo, and yeah, we gave him some rifles and some handguns, and yeah, they ended up killing the guy, but we don't know that the handgun and the rifles we gave him were the ones they used, so we didn't really have anything to do with that. Oh my god, it's hilarious for obvious reasons. So, same thing down in Chile, right? Same thing in Chile. They were they're like, yep, we gave over a bunch of rifles, but no, we don't know. We don't know what happened. You know, we just don't know. God, the CIA has made an art of passing the buck, haven't they? All right. Section 5, CIA White House Communications during Track 2. The testimony given to the committee by Henry Kissinger and General Haig conflicts with that given by CIA officials. Kissinger and Haig testified that on October 15, 1970, the White House stood down CIA efforts to promote a military coup d'etat in Chile. Both testified that after that date, they were neither informed of nor authorized CIA Track 2 activities, including the kidnap plans of General Schneider and the passage of weapons to the military plotters. By contrast, CIA officials testified that they operated before and after October 15th with knowledge and approval of the White House. The conflict pertains directly to the period after October 15th, but it bears on the degree of communication between the White House and the CIA in the earlier period as well. For instance, Henry Kissinger testified that he was informed of no coup plan, which began with the abduction of General Schneider. He was aware of General Vio's plan, which he and Karamessinis decided on October 15th to try to forestall, but did not know it was going to begin with Schneider's abduction. CIA officials, especially Thomas Karamessinis, stated that there was close consultation throughout Track 2 between the agency and the White House. Karamessinis testified that he met with Kissinger some 6 to 10 times during the 5 weeks of Track 2, Karamessinis' testimony, page 66, and that he kept Kissinger generally informed of developments. The committee has records of 2 meetings between Karamessinis and Kissinger, and one of telephone conversation between Karamessinis and Kissinger's deputy, Alexander Haig. Karamessinis' daily calendar indicates that 3 other meetings with General Haig took place, but does not establish with certainty that the topic was Track 2. The calendar also suggests that Karamessinis and Kissinger met on 3 other occasions, and so might have had the opportunity to discuss Track 2. Henry Kissinger's testimony before the committee differs from Karamessinis in 2 respects. He believed Track 2 was turned off on October 15th, and after that date he was informed neither of the coup plans of the Chilean conspirators nor of the passage of weapons to them. He said that Track 2 was, quote, in the nature of a probe and not in the nature of a plan. No plan for a coup was ever submitted to the White House. So my recollection of events was a request by Nixon for Track 2, which led to 2 or 3 meetings, which then on October 15th led to being turned off by the White House, after which Track 2 was dead as far as my office was concerned, and we never received another report on the subject. Kissinger testimony, page 15. In my mind, Track 2 was finished on October 15th, and I never received any further CIA information after October 15th on the basis of any records that I have been able to find. A couple things I want to point out here. Number one, all this is still done this is all being done under President Nixon. Another thing I want to point out here is that it seems as though, based on the information coming out in these testimonies, that there is still some level of oversight that's supposed to be going on here over the CIA, right? Like, the CIA isn't supposed to be off doing its own thing as a rogue agency. And here it shows that there at least was some sort of attempt at oversight. General Haig's testimony generally coincided with Kissinger's recollection. I left the October 15th meeting with the distinct impression that there was nothing that could be done in this covert area that offered promise or hope for success. I had the distinct impression that was Dr. Kissinger's conclusion, and that in effect these things, and I wasn't even really familiar with what these two groups were to do and how they were to do it, but they were to cease and desist. Haig testimony 26-27. My recollection would be that we had no hope for a viable covert plan of action. That's the impression I got. That's from General Haig also. The following pages present the committee's record of communication between the White House and the CIA from September 18th through December 2nd. Helms and Karen Macinas met with Kissinger at the White House. As Helms' notes of the September 15th meeting indicate, Kissinger wanted a plan within 48 hours. In the meeting on the 18th, according to CIA records, there was little discussion of a military coup, rather the conversation on what economic leverage could be exercised in the Chilean situation. Memorandum meeting with DDP, 18th of September. The efficacy of economic pressure continued to be a subject of concern during the last days of September. Apparently, that pressure was viewed as another inducement to Frey to opt for the Frey gambit. September 21st, the 40 Committee met. The Select Committee has no confirmation that Chile was on the agenda at this meeting. Karen Macinas' calendar confirms that he attended. Presumably Kissinger, the 40 Committee chairman, also attended, although the committee has not been able to review his calendar. All that can be said about this meeting and the meetings of the Senior Review Group, which Kissinger also chaired, is that the meetings afforded Karen Macinas and Kissinger an opportunity to meet privately and discuss Track 2 if they desired. In all these instances, save the 40 Committee meeting on September 22nd, the committee has no evidence to confirm that such a private Kissinger-Karen Macinas meeting actually took place. That the CIA prepared a memorandum of conversation for the private meeting on the 22nd, but was able to find none for other meetings, may provide some support for the argument that no other such private meetings occurred. September 22nd, Kissinger asked Karen Macinas to stay behind after a 40 Committee meeting called to discuss Track 1. The two men discussed Track 2 actions, especially the contacts with then Chilean President Frey. According to CIA records of the... I can't read that. Kissinger told Karen Macinas that our handling of the problem during the earlier meeting had been perfect, and he added, we were doing fine and keep it up. October 5th, a cable sent to Santiago, released by Karen Macinas, requested a report on how the station planned to contact the three Chilean generals. Redacted Valenzuela and redacted named in a cable of September 30th. The October 5th cable indicated that the report was needed for a discussion with Kissinger on October 6th. Karen Macinas presumed such a meeting had taken place, although he had no specific memory of it. His calendar for October 6th indicates that he attended a 40 Committee meeting in Chile. Kissinger chaired the 40 Committee. October 6th, the station reported that General Viel was ready to launch the Golpe evening 9th of October, or more like the 10th of October. In response, CIA headquarters labeled the prospective coup one with scant chance of success, which will vitiate any further more serious action. The station was directed to try to stop ill-considered action at this time. Kissinger testified he had not been informed of the VO plan, supporting his recollection with the fact that the CIA memorandum of an October 10th conversation between Karen Macinas and Haig makes no mention of any previous plots. Similarly, Kissinger did not remember having been informed that the CIA had called off a coup and regarded it as premature. He stated, quote, my perception at the period was that if they had a coup, they would come back to us before triggering it. At no time during the period did they in fact tell us that they had a coup that might be ready to go, and indeed they generally told us the opposite. As Karen Macinas' calendar indicated, there was a 40 Committee meeting on October 6th. He attended this meeting along with Richard Helms and William Brough of the CIA. According to the minutes of that meeting, CIA efforts to promote a military coup in Chile were not discussed. However, in an exchange with Charles Meyer, who was then Station Department's Assistant Secretary for Latin American Affairs, Dr. Kissinger stressed the desire of higher authority, President Nixon, to prevent Allende's assumption of office. According to the minutes, quote, Mr. Meyer pointed to the need to determine a post-Allende position such as proposed as NSSM 97. It was agreed that an early NSC meeting, National Security Council meeting, was desirable on that subject. Mr. Kissinger said that this presumed total acceptance of a fait accompli and higher authority had no intention of conceding before the 24th. On the contrary, he wanted no stone left unturned. October 8th, Karen Macinas met for lunch with General Haig. In his testimony, Haig recalled being aware that the CIA was in touch with two different groups of military plotters. He believed there must have been another meeting in which the CIA informed him of its ongoing contacts. Quote, "It seems to me, although the records don't reflect it, that there was a meeting in September, a very brief one, in which I must have been told that there was a specific program going underway. That probably would have been by Henry Kissinger and perhaps with Karen Macinas there, I'm not sure." Haig testimony, page 12. October 10th, Karen Macinas discussed the Chilean situation by telephone with General Haig. He indicated that the station had made direct contact with a number of senior military officers, especially those who had been reportedly very activist-minded and had received pessimistic reactions from all. Haig recalled the telephone conversation with Karen Macinas on the 10th. His recollection accords with the CIA memorandum of conversation. "I do know, and I know that looking at the record this morning, that Karen Macinas made a telephone call to me in which she gave a progress report. I recall that it was in effect a negative progress report, that they were just not coming up with it." Haig testimony, page 12. Haig indicated to the committee that he would have passed along the substance of that conversation to Kissinger, and that in general his role at the time was one of a conduit to Kissinger. "I'm quite confident that, given my own conception of my role at that time, that I would have conveyed that information to Henry." A question: if Mr. Karen Macinas was unable to see Dr. Kissinger and talk to you, what degree of latitude did you have concerning what you would pass on to Dr. Kissinger? General Haig: "At that time, I would consider I had no degree of latitude other than to convey to him what had been given to me." October 14th. A cable to Santiago for Colonel Weimert, ostensibly from General Bennett, authorized Weimert to select two Chilean general officers and convey to them the following message, quote, "High authority in Washington has authorized you to offer material support short of armed intervention to Chilean armed forces in any endeavors they may undertake to prevent the election of Allende on October 24th. Karen Macinas testified that in this case, quote, "high authority" would have been Kissinger or the president, for no one else could have been given Weimert such broad authorization. Karen Macinas presumed that the message had been drafted in, or at least cleared with, the White House. However, Kissinger did not recall having authorized the October 14th cable. He found the sequence of events puzzling. Having been told on the 10th that little was happening, he would have expected in the meeting on the 15th to have discussed the results of the October 14th message. But the CIA record makes no mention of any such discussion. October 14th, the 40 Committee met to discuss, among other topics, Chile, in addition to the 40 Committee principals. Kissinger, Mitchell, David Packard, Alexis Johnson, Admiral Moore. The meeting was attended by Karen Macinas, William Brough, and General Robert Cushman of the CIA, Charles Meyer from State, Byron Vakey, and Ambassador Corey, who had returned to Washington from Santiago for a short period of consultation. According to the minutes of that meeting, Kissinger asked Karen Macinas to give a rundown on the latest developments and present situation in Chile. Karen Macinas pointed out that, quote, "a coup climate does not presently exist." He noted that the unpredictable General Vio is the only individual seemingly ready to attempt a coup, and his chances of mounting a successful one were slight. Ambassador Corey agreed with Karen Macinas' assessment and stated that as of now it seemed almost certain that Allende would be voted into office on October 24th. Kissinger then observed that, quote, "there presently appeared to be little the U.S. can do to influence the Chilean situation one way or another." Other participants at the meeting concurred. Memorandum for the record, minutes of the meeting of the 40 Committee, 14th of October, 1970, and 16th of October, 1970. October 15th, Karen Macinas met with Kissinger and Haig at the White House to discuss Track 2. According to the CIA memorandum of conversation, Karen Macinas gave a rundown on Vio, redacted, and, quote, "the general situation in Chile from the coup possibility viewpoint," It was concluded that Vio didn't have more than one chance in 20, perhaps less, to launch a successful coup. Kissinger ticked off the list of negative repercussions from an unsuccessful coup. The CIA record of the meeting continues. 5. It was decided by those present that the agency must get a message to Vio warning him against any precipitate action. In essence, our message was to state, quote, "We've reviewed your plans, and based on your information and ours, we come to the conclusion that your plans for coup at this time cannot succeed. Failing, they may reduce your capabilities for the future, preserve your assets. We will stay in touch. The time will come when you, with all your other friends, can do something. You will continue to have our support." 6. After the decision to defuse the Vio coup plot, at least temporarily, Dr. Kissinger instructed Mr. Karamenysis to preserve agency assets in Chile, working clandestinely and securely to maintain the capability for agency operations against Allende in the future. 8. The meeting concluded on Dr. Kissinger's note that the agency should continue keeping the pressure on every Allende weak spot in sight now, after the 24th of October, after 5th of November, and into the future until such a time as new marching orders are given. Mr. Karamessinas stated that the agency would comply. Kissinger, in his testimony before the committee, regarded the CIA memorandum of conversation as substantially correct, although somewhat more detailed than he would have remembered. Kissinger testimony, page 52. He believed the agency had been told to stand down and preserve your assets. Kissinger believed that the gist of the October 15th meeting, as recorded in the CIA memorandum, was incompatible with the order the CIA issued to its station the next day, an order ostensibly based on the October 15th meeting. And he noted in writing its memorandum of the meeting of the 15th, the CIA had, quote, high incentive to preserve the maximum degree of authority, quote. The October 16th order indicated that Track 2 had been reviewed at a high USG level the previous day and stated, 2. It is firm and continuing policy that Allende be overthrown by a coup. It would be much preferred to have this transpire prior to 24 October, but efforts in this regard will continue vigorously beyond this date. 4. There is great and continuing interest in the activities of redacted Valenzuela et al., and we wish them optimum good fortune. Kissinger recalled the October 15th conversation as turning off the coup plans rather than giving a new order to do them. Kissinger testimony, page 56. Haig agreed in this testimony. Quote, the conclusions of that meeting were that we had better not do anything rather than something that was not going to succeed. My general feeling was I left that meeting with the impression that there was nothing authorized. October 10th to October 22nd, Karamessinas and one or two others went with Kissinger to speak with the president after a larger meeting. Karamessinas believed this meeting took place between October 10th and 24th. According to Karamessinas, the president went out of his way to impress all those that with this conviction that it was absolutely essential that the election of Mr. Allende to the presidency be thwarted. As they were leaving the Oval Office, the president took Karamessinas aside to reiterate the message. October 19th, station cabled headquarters early in the morning, advising that the tear gas had been passed and outlining the Valenzuela coup plan, beginning with the kidnap of Schneider. In testimony before the committee, Karamessinas indicated he certainly would have reported the Valenzuela plan to Kissinger very promptly, if for no other reason than that we didn't have all that much promising news to report to the White House. Quote, and as I say, if for no other reason, we would have wanted to get this kind of hopeful report to the White House as soon as possible, and it would be my best estimate now that that is precisely what we did. In the afternoon of the 19th, Karamessinas met with General Haig for an hour at the White House. By then, Karamessinas would have had in hand the cable outlining the Valenzuela plan, since the cable had arrived that morning. And we have an asterisk here. If the meeting with the president occurred after October 15th, that would lend credence to the testimony of CIA officials that they were not directed to end their coup efforts in the October 15th meeting. Unfortunately, the committee has not had access to the daily calendars of President Nixon or Secretary Kissinger, which might pinpoint the date of the president's conversation with Karamessinas. Those calendars, along with other White House documents bearing on Track 2, have been subpoenaed. All right, next page. However, General Haig had no recollection of the meeting with Karamessinis on the 19th, nor did he believe that he had been informed of the Valenzuela plan. Quote, "This is all very new to me. I hadn't seen any of this, and I was not familiar with this particular plan or $50,000 or any of the characters that are described in here." Similarly, Kissinger testified that he had not been informed of the Valenzuela plan. He said he, quote, "was informed of nothing after October 15th. Kissinger testimony, page 65. He indicated that according to his daily calendar, he had no conversation with either Karamessinis or Helms between the 15th and 19th. He indicated that he never knew that the CIA was in the process of passing guns and tear gas to the Chilean military conspirators. He said, quote, "There was no further meeting on that subject. In anybody's record, mine or theirs, the CIA's, none of the information from the 16th on was familiar to me." Kissinger further testified that he did not know that the United States was dealing with Chilean officers who plotted a coup which involved the abduction of General Schneider. Quote, "Senator Hart of Colorado, I am not sure that the record clearly shows you answer to the direct question of whether you knew or did not know that we were negotiating with military officers with regard to a plot that did involve the abduction of General Schneider." Secretary Kissinger says, "I said I did not know." Kissinger testimony, page 86. Nor did General Haig believe he had been informed of any abduction plans before the fact. Question, were you aware during that period of time of the plans to kidnap General Schneider? General Haig says, I was aware after the fact. But were you never informed prior to his attempted abduction? Haig says, I don't believe I was at all. October 20th. A cable to the station indicated that, quote, while awaiting word on whatever events may have occurred on 19th October, please let us know what you can on an interim basis. Headquarters must respond during morning 20 October to queries from high levels. Headquarters Memo 883, 20th October 1970. Karamessinis testified that the references to high levels in the cable of the 20th meant White House officials, probably Kissinger. He felt quite certain that Kissinger would have been briefed in advance about Valenzuela's plan for the 19th, and so would have been expected to ask what happened on the morning of the 20th. Karamessinis testimony, page 73. In contrast, Kissinger interpreted that cable in precisely the opposite light. He felt it indicated that he had not been informed of the Valenzuela plan in advance. When news of the Schneider kidnap reached the White House, Kissinger believed he would have had somebody pick up a telephone and say, what is this all about? October 22nd, Karamessinis met with Haig at the White House. General Haig remembered that word of the shooting of Schneider came as a great shock to him, and he believed that Karamessinis had told him in their meeting on the 22nd. He thought that Kissinger either was present at the meeting or that he, Haig, had gone immediately into Kissinger's office to relate that Karamessinis had told him. Haig testimony, page 36. C. December 2nd, a memorandum dated December 2nd, 1970, from Helms to Kissinger, stated that Helms had given a recapitulation on Track 2 to Attorney General Mitchell, who would deliver it personally to Kissinger. A handwritten note on the memorandum reads, quote, sent to Kissinger via DCI, Helms. Helms memorandum for Kissinger, 2nd December, 1970. The report, which was dated November 18th, 1970, contained a full account of CIA activities during Track 2, including the several plans to kidnap Schneider and the passage of weapons to the Chilean conspirators. Report on CIA Chilean Task Force activities, 15th September to 3rd November 1970, 18th November 1970. In his testimony to the committee, Kissinger did not recall receiving the report, although he doubted that he would have had read such an after-action report in any case. He testified that he could not find it in his files, in contrast to his finding a CIA report on Track 1 dated November 19th, 1970. Kissinger was puzzled by a number of aspects of the memorandum and report, why there were two reports, why the report of the 18th apparently was only called to his attention on the 2nd of December, and why it was to be delivered through Mitchell. Kissinger testimony, page 71, 74. D. Did Track 2 end? The committee also received conflicting testimony about whether or not Track 2 ever ended, formally or in fact. As noted above, Kissinger indicated that Track 2 was supposed to have ended, as far as he was concerned, on October 15th. It was formally terminated, according to Kissinger, by a new presidential marching order issued prior to October 24th vote of the Chilean Congress. The committee does not have this new marching order in its possession. However, CIA officials from whom the committee took testimony believe that there had been no such definite end to Track 2. It merely tapered off to be replaced by a longer-term effort to effect a change of government in Chile. Karamessinas' testimony was most explicit. Quote, Mr. Karamessinas, I'm sure that the seeds that were laid in the effort in 1970 had their impact in 1973. I do not have any question about that in my mind either. Question, was Track 2 ever formally ended? Was there a specific order ending it? Karamessinas says, as far as I was concerned, Track 2 was really never ended. What we were told to do was, in effect, well, Allende is now president, so Track 2, which sought to prevent him from becoming president, was technically out. It was done. But what we were told is to do what we could to continue our efforts, stay alert, and to do what we could to contribute to the eventual achievement of the objective and the purpose of Track 2. That being the case, I didn't think it was proper to say Track 2 was ended. When informed of Karamessinas' testimony that Track 2 was never ended, Kissinger testified, quote, the chairman asked him, would you take issue with that, the Karamessinas' testimony? And Kissinger says, totally. It is clear that after October 15th that there was no separate channel by the CIA to the White House and that all actions with respect to Chile were taken in the 40 committee framework. There was no 40 committee that authorized an approach to or contact with the military people. No plots which I am familiar with, and all the covert operations in Chile after Allende's election by the Congress were directly towards maintaining the democratic opposition for the 1976 election. And that was the exclusive thrust, and if there was any further contact with military plotting, it was totally unauthorized, and this is the first that I have heard of it. A summary. It appears as though we've moved on to Vietnam. South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem and his brother Ngo Dinh Nhu were assassinated during a coup by Vietnamese generals on November 2nd, 1963. Evidence before the committee indicates that the United States government offered encouragement for the coup, but neither desired nor was involved in the assassinations. Rather, Diem's assassination appears to have been a spontaneous act by Vietnamese generals, engendered by anger at Diem for refusing to resign or put himself in the custody of the leaders of the group. On one occasion, General Duong Van Minh, Big Min, as they called him, outlined to a CIA officer the possible assassination of Nhu and brother Ngo Dinh Can as one of three methods being considered for changing the government in the near future. Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge and Deputy Chief Mission William Trueheart were informed of this possibility by the Saigon Chief of Station, who recommended that we do not set ourselves irrevocably against the assassination plot, since the other two alternatives mean either a bloodbath in Saigon or a protracted struggle which would rip the army and country asunder. CIA Cable, SAIG 1447, 10563. Upon being informed, Director McCone sent two cables. The first stated, quote, we cannot be in the position of stimulating, approving, or supporting assassination. And the second directed that the recommendation be withdrawn because, quote, we cannot be in a position actively condoning such course of action and thereby engaging our responsibility, therefore. CIA Cable DCI to Saigon 10563. B. The abortive coup of August 1963. On May 8th of 1963, South Vietnamese troops in the city of Hue fired on Buddhists protesting against the Diem government, killing 9 and wounding 14. This incident triggered a nationwide Buddhist protest and a sharp loss of popular confidence in the Diem regime. On May 18th, United States Ambassador Frederick P. looks like Nolting met with Diem and outlined steps which the United States desired him to take to redress the Buddhist grievances and recapture public confidence. These steps included admitting responsibility for the Hue incident, compensating the victims, and reaffirming religious equality in the country. Pentagon Papers, page 208. On June 3rd, Madame Nhu, NHU, the wife of Diem's brother, Nhu, publicly accused the Buddhists of being infiltrated with communist agents, not unlikely. Trueheart protested her remarks to Diem and threatened to dissociate the United States from any representative measures against the Buddhists in the future. Pentagon Papers, page 308. Shortly thereafter, Madame Nhu commented on the self-immolation of Kong Duk and other Buddhist monks by stating that she would like to furnish mustard for the monks' barbecue. Ouch. On June 12th, Trueheart told Diem that Quang Duk's suicide had shocked the world and again that the United States would break with his government if he did not solve the Buddhist problem. Lucien Conein, now there's a name we haven't gotten to yet. A CIA officer in Saigon testified that the Buddhist uprisings were the catalyst that ultimately brought down the Diem regime, Conin, page 42 to 44. These events led to the United States to apply direct, relentless, and table-hammering pressure on Diem, such that the United States has seldom before attempted with a sovereign-friendly government. That's from Mecklin, page 169. By July 4th, 1963, Generals Min, Don Kim, and Kiem had agreed on the necessity for a coup. In his final meeting on August 14th with Ambassador Nolting, Diem agreed to make a public statement offering concessions to the Buddhists. This statement took the form of an interview. We have some asterisks here. Conin testified that he had known the generals involved in the coup. Quote, for many years, some of them I had known back even in World War II. Some of them were in powerful positions, and I was able to talk to them on a person-to-person basis, not as a government official. Double asterisk, Conin's after-action report stated that, quote, the majority of the officers, including General Min, desired President Diem to have honorable retirement from the political scene in South Vietnam and exile. As to Ngo, Dinh Nhu, and No Dinh Can, God, these fucking Vietnamese names, I swear. There was never dissension. The attitude was that their deaths, along with Madame No, Dinh Nhu, would be welcomed. Conin after-action report, page 10. Next paragraph. Shortly after midnight on August 21st, 1963, Nhu ordered forces loyal to him to attack the pagodas throughout Vietnam, arresting monks and sacking the sacred buildings. Over 30 monks were injured and 1,400 arrested. The American embassy was taken by surprise and viewed the attacks as shattering repudiation of Diem's promises to Nolting. Pentagon Papers, page 210. On August 24th, 1963, the State Department sent a cable to the new ambassador in Vietnam, Henry Cabot Lodge. The telegram was prepared by Roger Hilsman, Assistant Secretary for State for Far Eastern Affairs and Undersecretary of State Averell Harriman, and was approved by President Kennedy. Pentagon Papers, page 235. Deptel 243 told Lodge to press Diem to take prompt dramatic actions to redress the grievances of the Buddhists. You know, what's really coming to be fucking quite blatantly obvious is that the CIA has been a loose cannon since its inception. Really. Since 1947, they've been answering to nobody and no American authority. They've been answering to the international Jew, if I can discern correctly. All right, here's a quote. We must, at the same time, also tell key military leaders that U.S. would find it impossible to continue support GVN, Vietnamese government, military and economically, unless steps are taken immediately, which we recognize requires removal of the NHUs from the scene. We wish Diem reasonable opportunity to remove News, but if he remains obdurate, then we are prepared to accept the obvious implication that we can no longer support Diem. You may also tell appropriate military commanders we will give them direct support in any interim period of breakdown central government mechanism. Concurrently with above, ambassador and country teams should urgently examine all possible alternative leadership and make detailed plans as to how we might bring Diem's replacement if this should become necessary. Conin testified that the raids might have been timed to occur when no American ambassador was in Vietnam. Nolting had left a few days before and his replacement Lodge had not yet arrived. Conin, page 21. In a cable on August 25th, CIA Station Chief John Richardson reported the result of a conference among himself, Lodge, Trueheart, General Harkins, Commander Military Assistance Command. They accepted Deptel 243, quote, as a basic decision from Washington and would proceed to do their best to carry out instructions, end quote, but believed that Diem would refuse to remove his brother from his position in the government. Early in the morning of August 26, 1963, the Voice of America in South Vietnam placed the blame on Nhu for the August 21st raids and absolved the army. The broadcast also reported speculation that the United States contemplated suspending aid to the South Vietnamese government. Pentagon Papers, page 212. Later on that same day, Lodge presented his credentials to Diem. CIA officers Conin and Spera were told to see Generals Kiem and Khan, respectively, and to convey to them the substance of Deptel 243, but to remind them that, quote, we cannot be of any help during initial action of assuming power of state, entirely their own action, win or lose. A message from the White House on August 29th authorized Harkins to confirm the Vietnamese generals that the United States would support a coup if it had good chance of succeeding but did not involve United States and armed forces. Lodge was authorized to suspend United States aid at his discretion, Deptel 272. A cable from President to Lodge on the same day stated, quote, I have approved all the messages you are receiving from others today, and I emphasize that everything in these messages has my full support. We will do all that we can to help you conclude this operation successfully. Until the very moment of the go signal for the operation by the generals, I must reserve a contingent right to change course and reserve previous instructions. While fully aware of your assessment of the consequence of such a reversal, I know from experience that failure is more destructive than an appearance of indecision. I would, of course, accept full responsibility for any such change, as I must also bear the full responsibility for this operation and its consequences. In a reply, Cable Lodge stated, quote, I fully understand that you have the right and responsibility to change course at any time. Of course, I will always respect that right. And to be successful, this operation must be essentially a Vietnamese affair with a momentum of its own. Should this happen, you may not be able to control it, i.e., the go signal may be given by the generals. A cable from Saigon dated August 31st, 1963 stated, quote, this particular coup is finished. Generals did not feel ready and did not have sufficient balance of forces. There's little doubt that GNV, South Vietnamese government, aware U.S. role and may have considered considerable detail. Deptel 243 and the VOA broadcast set the tone for later relations between the United States representatives and the generals. Big Min, who had initial doubts about the strength of American support, grew in confidence. See the November 63 coup. American dissatisfaction with the Diem regime became increasingly apparent. On September 8th, AID Director David Bell, in a television interview, stated that Congress might cut aid to South Vietnam if the Diem government did not change its course. Pentagon Papers, page 214. Lodge suggested a study to determine the most effective methods of cutting aid to topple the regime. Pentagon Papers, page 214. On September 12th, with White House approval, Senator Church introduced a resolution in Senate condemning the South Vietnamese government for its repressive handling of the Buddhist problem and calling for an end to the United States aid unless the oppressive measures were curtailed. In mid-September 1963, two proposals for dealing with Diem were considered by the administration. The first contemplated increasingly severe pressure to bring Diem in line with American policy. The second involved acquiescing in Diem's actions, recognizing that Diem and Nhu were inseparable and attempting to salvage as much as possible. It was decided to adopt the first proposal and to send Secretary of Defense McNamara and General Taylor on a fact-finding mission to Vietnam. Pentagon Papers, page 215. On October 2nd, McNamara and Taylor returned to Washington and presented their findings to the National Security Council. Their report confirmed that the military effort was progressing favorably, but warned of the dangers inherent in the political turmoil and recommended bringing pressure against Diem. This pressure would include announcing the withdrawal of 1,000 American troops by the end of the year, ending support for the forces responsible for the pagoda raids, and continuing Lodge's policy of remaining aloof from the regime. Hang on, we're going to reread this paragraph. The report recommended against the coup, but suggested that alternative leadership should be identified and cultivated. The recommendations were promptly approved by the president. Okay, so something caught my attention here. So please, let's be very much aware that Kennedy had no intention of pulling out of Vietnam at all. He was going to pull out of Vietnam, so they killed him story is such utter bullshit. It's unbelievable. So let me reread this. On October 2nd, McNamara and Taylor returned to Washington and presented their findings to the National Security Council. Their report, this is October 2nd, 1963, their report confirmed that the military effort was progressing favorably. Okay, the military effort was progressing favorably, but warned of the dangers inherent in the political turmoil and recommended bringing pressure against Diem. This pressure would include announcing the withdrawal of 1,000 American troops by the end of the year, ending support for the forces responsible for the pagoda raids, and continuing Lodge's policy of remaining aloof from the regime. All right, you guys know me a little. What caught my attention in this paragraph? This sentence here. Quote, this pressure would include announcing the withdrawal of 1,000 American troops by the end of the year. Okay. So here, Kennedy, they're writing up that Kennedy's decision to announce the withdrawal of 1,000 American troops by the end of the year was all part of a pressure campaign on Diem, not a signal that he was going to be exiting from Vietnam. So Ergo and Jim and Tony, let's see what we can't do here in regards to finding any information on Kennedy's announcements to withdraw troops and if it could possibly be part of this pressure campaign. Also, while you're at it, let's pull any and all information you can find on McNamara and Kennedy's decision to purchase $6 billion worth of airplanes and helicopters for the war at a time frame unknown. But yeah, this caught me off guard because here it's basically making clear that the withdrawal of American troops from South Vietnam was part of a pressure campaign against Diem. You know, here's the thing that I never really considered or even wanted to bother wasting any time on, but I probably should, is being that I'm sitting here and adamantly telling you that the Vietnam War had nothing to do with Kennedy's assassination. I should probably at some point do a deep dive into the Vietnam War in the early stages of the Vietnam War in 62 and 63 in order to back that fucking claim, right? Shouldn't I? Okay, great. Well, I just got that's a whole nother book that I can add to my future list. On October 3rd, Conin contacted Min. Min explained that a coup was being planned and requested assurances of American support if it were successful. Min outlined 3 courses of action, one of which was the assassination of Diem's brothers, New and Can. Conin, page 25, Cable, Saigon to Director, 10-5-63. The acting chief of CIA station, David Smith, cabled on October 5th that he had recommended to Lodge that we do not set ourselves irrevocably against the assassination plot since the other 2 alternatives mean either a bloodbath in Saigon or a protracted struggle. Cable, Saigon to Director, 10-5-63. A cable from the director of CIA to Saigon responded that, quote, "We certainly cannot be in a position of stimulating, approving, or supporting assassination, but on the other hand, we are in no way responsible for stopping every such a threat which we might receive even partial knowledge. We certainly would not favor assassination of Diem. We believe engaging ourselves by taking position on this matter opens door to easily for probes of our position, others re-support of regime, etc. Consequently, we believe best approach is hands-off. However, we naturally interested in intelligence on any such plan," end quote. We have some asterisks here. The other courses of action were the encirclement of Saigon by various military units and direct confrontation between military units involved in the coup and loyalist units. Double asterisk. Colby, who was then Chief Far Eastern Division, drafted this cable from McCone. Colby testified, quote, under the question, "So you were on notice as of that date that the director personally opposed any involvement by the CIA in an assassination?" Colby says, "I certainly was." McCone testified that he privately met with the president and the attorney general, taking the position that, quote, "our role was to assemble all information on intelligence as to what was going on and to report it to the appropriate authorities, but to not attempt to direct it." He believed the United States should maintain a hands-off attitude. McCone, page 62, McCone testified, quote, "I felt that the president agreed with my position despite the fact that he had great reservations concerning Diem and his conduct. I urged him to try to bring all the pressure we could on Diem to change his ways, to encourage more support throughout the country. My precise words to the president, and I remember them very clearly, was that, Mr. President, if I was manager of a baseball team, I had one pitcher. I'd keep him in the box whether he was a good pitcher or not. By that I was saying that if Diem was removed, we would not have one coup, but we would have the succession of coups and political disorder in Vietnam, and it might last several years, and indeed it did." McCone, page 62-63. McCone stated that he did not discuss assassination with the president, but rather whether we should let the coup go or use our influences not to go. He left the meeting believing that the president agreed with his hands-off recommendation. McCone cabled Smith on October 6th. Quote, "McCone directs that you withdraw recommendation to ambassador concerning assassination plan under McCone instructions, as we cannot be in position to actively condoning such course of action and thereby engaging our responsibility. Therefore, CIA to Saigon, Directorate 73661-10663. In response, CIA station in Saigon cabled headquarters. Action taken as directed. In addition, since DCM Trueheart was also present when original recommendation was made, specific withdrawal of recommendation at McCone's instruction was also conveyed to Trueheart. Ambassador Lodge commented that he shares McCone's opinion. Saigon to CIA, Saigon Cable 1463-10763. Conein, the CIA official who dealt directly with generals, testified that he was first told of McCone's response to the assassination alternative by Ambassador Lodge around October 20th. Conein, page 35. Conein testified, but did not so indicate in his detailed after-action report, that he then told General Don that the United States opposed assassination and that the general responded, "All right, you don't like it, we won't talk about it anymore." Conein, page 36. The United States increased pressure on Diem to mend his ways. On October 17th, General Richard Stilwell informed Secretary Thon, Thuan, that the United States was suspending aid to the Special Forces units responsible for the Pagoda raids until they were transferred to the field and placed under Joint General Staff Command. Pentagon Papers, page 217. On October 27th, Lodge traveled to Dalat with Diem, but did not receive any commitment from Diem to comply with American requests. On October 28th, Conein met with General Don, who had received assurances from Lodge that Conein spoke for the United States. Don said that he would make the plans for the coup. We have an asterisk here. Conein described his role as follows, quote, "My job was to convey the orders from my ambassador and the instructions from my ambassador to the people who were planning the coup, to monitor those individuals who were planning the coup, to get as much information so that our government would not be caught with their pants down." Conein testimony, page 38-39, available to the ambassador for 4 hours before it took place, and suggested that Lodge not change his plans to go to the United States. On October 30th, Lodge reported to Washington that he was powerless to stop the coup and that the matter was entirely in Vietnamese hands. General Harkins disagreed and cabled his opposition to the coup to General Taylor. A cable from Bundy, that's McGeorge Bundy, to Lodge, dated October 30th, expressed White House concern and stated that we cannot accept conclusion that we have no power to delay or discourage a coup. Cable Bundy to Lodge, 10/30/63. A subsequent cable on that same day from Washington instructed Lodge to intercede with the generals to call off the coup, but if he did not believe it would succeed, the instructions prescribed, quote, "strict involvement and somewhat less strict neutrality." Pentagon Papers, page 220. Late in the morning of November 1st, the first units involved in the coup began to deploy around Saigon. The embassy was given only 4 minutes warning before the coup began. An aide to Don told Conein to bring all available money to the Joint General Staff headquarters. Conein brought 3 million piastres, approximately $42,000, to the headquarters, which was given to Don to procure food for his troops and to pay death benefits to those killed in the coup. Conein was at the Joint General Staff headquarters during most of the coup. At 1:40 p.m., the generals proposed that Diem resign immediately and guaranteed him and Yu safe departure. Conein after-action report, page 15. The palace was surrounded shortly afterwards, and at 4:30 p.m., the generals announced the coup on the radio and demanded the resignation of Diem and Yu. Diem called Lodge and inquired about the United States' position. Lodge responded that the United States did not yet have a view and expressed concern for Diem's safety. According to Conein's report, Min told Yu that if he and Diem did not resign within 5 minutes, the palace would be bombed. Min then phoned Diem. Diem refused to talk with him, and Min ordered the bombing of the palace. Troops moved in on the palace, but Diem still refused to capitulate. Min offered Diem a second chance to surrender half an hour later, telling him that if he refused, he would be blasted off the earth. Shortly before nightfall, an air assault was launched on the Presidential Guard barracks. At 6:20 on the morning of November 2nd, Diem called General Don at the Joint General Staff headquarters and offered to surrender if he and Yu were given safe conduct to an airport. Shortly afterwards, Diem offered to surrender unconditionally and offered the Presidential Guard to cease firing. According to Conein, an escort for Diem appeared in the front of the palace at 8 o'clock, but Diem and Yu were not present. Conein after-action report, page 24. At 10:30 a.m., the bodies of Diem and Yu were reported to be at the Joint General Chief's headquarters. Conein declined to view the bodies because he feared that doing so might damage United States interests. The details of Diem's and Yu's deaths were not known. Asterisk says Conein speculated that Diem and Yu escaped through a tunnel from the palace and fled to a Catholic church in Chalon. He opined that the informant must have identified them and called the General Staff headquarters. Another CIA source stated that Diem and Yu had left the palace the previous evening with a Chinese businessman and arrived at the church at 8 o'clock in the morning on November 2nd. 10 minutes later, they were picked up by soldiers and forced into an army vehicle. Cable Saigon to State, number 888. Min originally told Conein that Diem and Yu had committed suicide, but Conein doubted that Catholics would have taken their own lives in a church. The Inspector General's report states that on November 16, 1963, a field-grade officer of unknown reliability gave the CIA 2 photographs of the bodies of Diem and Nieu in which it appeared that their hands were tied behind their backs. The source reported that Diem and Nieu had been shot and stabbed while being conveyed to the Joint General Staff headquarters. None of the informed sources give any indication of our direct or indirect involvement of the United States. It must be noted that on October 30th, 63, Ambassador Lodge notified Washington that there might be a request by KED leaders for evacuation and suggested Saipan as a point for evacuation. Saigon Cable number 2036 103063. Konin was charged with O'braining the airplane. O'braining? I don't know what motherfucking word that is. I never heard that in all of my fucking years. Between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock on the morning of November 2nd, Min and Don were asked Konin to produce an aircraft. Konin relayed the request to David Smith, acting chief of station at the embassy, who replied that it would not be possible to get an aircraft for the next 24 hours since it would have to be flown from Guam. Konin testified that Smith told him that Diem could be flown only to a country that offered him asylum and that the plane could not land in any other country. There were no aircraft immediately available that had sufficient range to reach a potential country of asylum. All right, and it looks like we have a brand new document here. So let's just recap what we've covered on ZRRIFLE and why this document pertains to all this stuff, everything from Chile to the Dominican Republic to Vietnam. And so this is obviously a late 1970s committee meeting trying to establish if the ZRRIFLE program was actually responsible for these assassination plots, right? And so you have Bill Harvey, who was, where was he? Was he in Rome? He was in Rome. I think he was transferred back from Rome. Kennedy put him there because he pissed him off for something. I forget what. But he's transferred back, and he is in charge of ZRRIFLE, and he then rolls the alleged assassination attempts against Castro into the ZRRIFLE program. However, at the same time, you have these plots that are going on in the Dominican Republic and Chile, where the fucking CIA obviously gives the go-ahead to these dissidents, provides them weapons, right? And then they go ahead and they kill the motherfuckers they're talking about killing. But then the CIA is like, well, we're not sure if the weapons we gave them were the ones that were used, so we deny responsibility. You go fuck yourself, right? So that's the connection there between ZRRIFLE and all these plots, right? But there's more ZRRIFLE documents that we'll get to that really directly, for me, in my opinion, connect Jean-Pierre Lafitte, Jack Valente, and a whole bunch of other people to this eventual ZRRIFLE program. See, and this is where the overlap between ZRRIFLE and MK Ultra comes into play, and that's because of the connection with Jean-Pierre Lafitte, right? So Jean-Pierre Lafitte throws what's his name out of the fucking window in New York City. Olson, right? He throws Olson out of the window in New York City with a guy named Francois Spirito. Both of these guys, Jean-Pierre Lafitte, who I'm sure is not his birth name, and Francois Spirito they're Corsican gangsters, right? But in the fucking 50s, they're working for the CIA and the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, or was it the Bureau of Dangerous Drugs at that point? I forget. I think it was the Bureau of Dangerous Drugs in the 1950s and 60s. But that didn't last very long either, and that led to the DEA, which became a CIA project right away. But to me, this is where the overlap comes with MKUltra and ZRRIFLE, and that is specifically with Jean-Pierre Lafitte, and because his partner, his buddy, Francois Spirito, ends up in Angola prison in Atlanta, Georgia. And then they fucking experiment on him with LSD and shit like that. So weird stuff going on there that I haven't really got to the bottom of. But again, my opinion on MK Ultra is that MK Ultra is nothing more than a cover for the U.S. bioweapons program and chemical weapons program. Because you got to think all the fucking mind control shit was chemical based. All of it, right? Therefore, all of the fucking MK Ultra stuff was a cover for chemical weapons, right? That's what they were doing. And biological weapons, I think, at some point later on. So there we go. We'll talk about it again some point in the future. Let me see. All right, so we're onto this new document. I'm on page 148 of 210. Do I think I can get through all of this tomorrow? No. Let me see what this looks like. Do I want to start this today or should we just start this tomorrow? All right. So we are on the, looks like the findings and conclusions section. So yeah, I'll hold off on this till tomorrow. There's a pretty lengthy table of contents, but we will pick this up tomorrow or Monday, one of the two. And thank you everybody for tuning in. What else is there? Is there anything else? Nope, I think that's it for today. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye.